Part 2. Mark decided that they would take the Blazer tomorrow. He filled it up and put his small toolbox and the other emergency supplies he used to carry in the Jeep into the Chevy. He checked the tires and all the fluids to make sure everything was ship-shape. Whoever had owned the 4x4 before the burst had taken very good care of it. Mark was still looking over the truck when David came out and told him that his homework was done. Mark walked back into the house with just the slightest limp. His leg hadn't bothered him much today. He found Jess helping Timmy with some of his schoolwork. She was so motherly, and Timmy seemed so comfortable with her that it would have been almost impossible for a stranger to tell that she wasn't his natural mother. She saw Mark looking at them, and she smiled at him. "Will you come find me in the study when you have a minute?" he asked. "Sure," she replied sweetly. "I'll be there in 5, she winked. Mark was a little puzzled at her flirtatious nature. She already had his answer on the boys. What else could she want? Who could figure what women ever wanted, he thought. At least she's in a good mood. Maybe I'll only have to sleep on the couch for a night or two when I tell her I'm taking David tomorrow. He went to the study and started pulling out the guns they would take on the trip. Jess came in the room. "What's up, stud muffin?" Mark didn't want to jump right into it. "How are Timmy and Tommy doing?" "They're doing surprisingly well. I need you to spend some time with them when you get a chance. Just an hour or so playing ball with them or teaching them some karate." That was what she wanted. "Okay, as soon as I can, I promise," he told her, and she smiled back. Might as well get into it, he thought. "I'm going to take David with me and George in the morning." He braced himself for the Irish fury. "Okay," she answered. Mark blinked. He must be dreaming. He has all his homework done, and he'll make up any schoolwork he misses tomorrow. And some things are more important than going to school every day. Mark made his first arguments, not yet realizing that they were unnecessary. "Look, I said okay. In fact, with Timmy and Tommy moving in, it's a good idea for you to spend a little extra time with David." "Okay, thanks." Mark could not believe it. "I have something to tell you, too. Susan came and talked to me this afternoon. She asked me to be on her scout team." Mark blinked again. Of course, he thought she was feeling really good about herself. That the other women looked up to her enough to ask her was a big deal for her. She had no intention of actually doing it. Mark hadn't been married to this woman for 20 years and not learned a thing or two. She just wanted his validation, too. I can't blame her. I told her to pick fighters, and you're the best fighter around, kiddo. She told me you said not to pick quitters, and that's why she wanted me. You would have been first on my list, too, he said, smiling. Are you going to do it? He already knew the answer, but if he didn't ask, he would know that he was on to her. No need for her to know that he was getting smart in his old age. He was becoming good at this politics game, he said to himself. Yes. He heard her wrong. No, he couldn't have heard her wrong. She misunderstood the question. You're going to be on the women's scout team. Yes, that's what I said. But don't you have to teach school? He asked, hoping she hadn't thought this all the way through. I can teach on the days I'm not on duty, she informed him matter-of-factly. He finally blurted it out. But I don't want you to do it. I knew you wouldn't. She wasn't angry, but this is important. And unless you can think of a valid reason why I shouldn't do it, I'm going to give it a shot. He put his brain into overdrive. Teaching the children was more important than this, right? He could use that argument, but hadn't he just said that some things were more important than school? He couldn't come up with one reason that she wouldn't chop it into ribbons. He would just have to hope Gunny could wring the desire out of her. I see you've given this a lot of thought. If you want to try it, I won't stand in your way. She hugged him. Thanks, sweetheart. I just hope you know what you're getting yourself into. Gunny is going to run the dog crap out of you guys. I know. Susan told me that too. I can do it. She squeezed him a little tighter. I need to finish helping Timmy. He kissed her on the head, and she left him with his thoughts. He kicked himself for being stupid enough to think that he'd been in control a few minutes ago. The people in the neighborhood might look to him for guidance, but in the Turner household there was no doubt about who was in charge. He went out to the shed to get some ammo. It was almost dark, and he had to use a flashlight inside the metal building. He was still mumbling to himself about how Jess had played him. When he stepped through the door, he thought he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. He swung the light toward the corner, thinking it was some varmint. Two shocked faces blinked into the blinding light. The thieves flashed through his mind. His hand shot down to his pistol. The faces were familiar, too. He looked at them. One of them was his Samantha. The other was Ted Petrie's son, Alex. What was wrong with his face? It had red marks on it. And what were they doing in here? Had Jess sent them to get something? If so, then why didn't they have a flashlight? Was it possible they were the thieves? Mark refused to believe that. Suddenly it was clear. It was Sam's lipstick on his face. He heard his own voice. "What are you two doing in here?" What a dumb question, he thought. "We weren't doing anything, Dad," Sam stammered. Mark didn't know how to deal with this. MZBs were easy. They were the enemy. You killed them before they killed you. Simple. But this threat came from the inside. It was something Mark had known for a long time he would have to face, yet here it was, and he didn't know what to do or say. An idea flashed through his mind. He could just shoot the kid and say he thought he was a burglar. No, he couldn't do that. But he wondered how many fathers had thought the same thing. He had to say or do something. "That's not what it looks like to me, young lady. You get into the house." "Yes, Dad," Sam said. Then she did the strangest thing. She kissed the young man on the cheek. And whispered something in his ear and then ran out of the shed and toward the house. Mark just stared at this gawky kid for a minute. He was so skinny, and he was such a nerd. What was Mark going to say to him? Before he decided, Alex spoke. "Mr. Turner, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," Mark replied sardonically. "Sam and I have been seeing a lot of each other lately." Mark wasn't sure how true that was. How much of a person could you see in the dark with your face stuck to theirs? "We have become quite fond of each other." No shit, Sherlock, Mark thought. He didn't like where this talk was going. He had to sidetrack it. This was his little girl that this whatever he was and he were talking about. "What did she tell you?" "Sir?" Alex asked. "Sam, what did she whisper to you before she left?" "She told me not to be afraid." He stood straight and tall when he said it. "Well, you should be afraid. Now you run on home." "But, Mr. Turner, I really need to talk to you, man to man." "Fine. When you're a man, come and find me. I'm not talking man to man with some kid who has my teenager daughter's lipstick all over his face and has to hide out in my shed to do God knows what." Alex tried to wipe the red marks off his face. "But I really need to talk to you now." "Maybe you didn't hear me the first time. I said no. You get on home." Mark's voice was cold and flat. The boy just stared at him. "Now!" Mark yelled. The young man jumped at Mark's last command. He ran out of the shed, appearing to be all knees and elbows. Mark grabbed the boxes of ammunition that he'd come to the shed for. When he went out, he locked the door. He and Jim had moved all of the weapons, drugs, and alcohol out earlier in the day. There was no need to lock it for that reason. There was something the shed held that was still valuable and becoming scarcer every day. Privacy was becoming harder and harder to find with all the people moving in. It was a futile gesture, Mark knew. The pit in his stomach confirmed it. The young would always find a place to be alone if they wanted, but it made him feel like he had some control. He walked back into the house and told Jess what he had walked into. She laughed. Mark was flabbergasted. How could she laugh? He asked her. "You weren't kissing girls when you were 17? She answered him with a question of her own. "That's beside the point. What if they were doing something else?" "Like what?" She laughed again. "Plotting to overthrow the world? Maybe they're the ones who caused the burst." "Oh, my God!" Her eyes opened wide, and she clutched her hands to her head dramatically. "You know what I'm talking about." He was on the verge of getting angry. "Mark, you don't have to worry about that." "How can you be so sure?" "Because, number one, we've raised her right, and we have to trust her and what we've taught her. Is she going to make mistakes? Yes, but she's smart, and she's not going to make a big mistake that could affect her future. And number two, if she was going to do that, she wouldn't go into a place where she's sure to be caught." Mark was confused again. That seemed to be happening a lot lately. "You mean like she wanted me to catch her?" "What do you think?" Jess smiled. "I don't know. I'm finding that how I think has nothing in common with how you females think. Why don't you clue me in?" "Oh, no. There's no pause button."